Well, let's discuss this further with Raoul Ruparel, who's the head of economic research at the think tank Open Europe, which campaigns for EU reform. He's also joining us from our central London studio. Good morning to you, Raoul. Let's ask this question. What happens if the UK doesn't pay this?
Well, I think if the UK refuses to pay, there's actually not a great amount of recourse for the EU. Obviously, they can start infraction proceedings and legal proceedings against the UK or even the Netherlands if the Netherlands refuse to pay. And they could end up levying fines on the UK, but the maximum fines would be around €200 million, €225 million per year, which obviously pales in comparison to the €2 billion which the UK is being asked to stump up at the moment. So in that sense, it might be hard for them to force the UK to pay. Obviously, this approach would have political and legal costs as well, but given that the UK is a large net contributor to the EU budget, on this front, I think the UK actually has quite a few cards to levy.
Our correspondent Ross was just talking about the various grounds on which the UK could potentially question this. Legal grounds, probably not. On the calculations, possibly. Diplomatically, yes. I mean, how much do you think the Commission is going to listen to member states that are going to it and saying, look, we're not happy with the way this has been somewhat sprung on us?
Well, I think on the EU budget, member states still have a lot of power and the Commission will have to listen to their decisions. So first and foremost, Cameron should seek to secure an agreement in the European Council which would be binding for the European Commission. One option is, of course, to say, well, let's just scrap this entirely because, you know, it's been sprung on a lot of member states. We'll just agree to pay in what we originally agreed and stick to the original calculations. That might be a tricky sell because obviously France and Germany are actually benefiting from this calculation in terms of getting a rebate. So that might be hard to secure, but I think if Cameron is making the political case about the rise of UKIP, about the position he's trying to take within the EU, then he might find some sympathy. Alternatively, of course, they could say we could take this off future budget contributions to make sure the net payment is not increasing. There are certainly many options they could get for political agreement, and I do think there may be some legal recourse. It could be challenging, but even if the UK launched legal proceedings and simply said, well, we'll wait and see how these pan out and not pay until then, I think that certainly is an option.
Just looking at this in a slightly broader European context, Raoul, you mentioned, of course, there how France and Germany are getting or are due a rebate as a result of these recalculations. It might surprise some people that Greece is being asked to pay a levy. I mean, what is the position with regards to Greece exactly?
Well, I think it's because this is done over such an extensive time period. As you mentioned, it goes all the way back to 1995. So it takes into account some of the boom periods in the late 90s and early 2000s, which some of these countries have, and then also some of the recovery that we're seeing currently. And the premise is essentially, did these countries do better or worse than had been expected? And in some cases, such as the UK's and maybe even Greece's, in certain periods they did better than had forecast, and so are asked to stump up a bit more money. One of the other issues is also that broadly the EU is changing the way that GDP is accounted and calculated. This has been reported over the coming months, and we've seen that actually many countries are increasing their GDP by including other aspects of their economy, and so that is also boosting the GDP of certain countries more than others.
OK, Raoul, thank you very much for your thoughts on that this morning, Raoul.